I was going to begin this video with a positive, but telling you Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy is better than Marvel's Avengers doesn't feel like much of a compliment. Just like, thank you for not sticking my head in a vice today isn't one either. The game isn't even better by way of actual improvement, only subtracting the worst parts of Avengers, live service gameplay with multiple characters, in favor of a single-player experience where you control one person directly and issue attack orders to the rest of the team. Square Enix didn't exactly strike gold with the Avengers superhero team formula, so I'm left wondering why they believed a second one would do any better without expanding much on the idea and only giving it a tenth of the marketing budget. Square Enix may have been a bit blinded by the success of Marvel movies and thought the same thing could be replicated in games. After all, as of the last few years, superhero games have been appearing in more game release calendars, only held back from dominating them like in cinema by the much longer development times of games versus movies. So far, they can only claim Spider-Man, a different Spider-Man, and Batman's Arkham games in the good column, since those built a game around a single hero with interesting abilities that translated into solid gameplay. Guardians of the Galaxy, on the other hand, is about a team, which seems to have failed to inspire the dev team as much when it came to gameplay innovations. With gameplay only rising to non-offensive, it's up to the plot to make a mark. I'm sure the developers wanted to write like James Gunn, but even James Gunn only hits the mark 2/3 of the time. For some of the younger viewers, you can barely even recall what life was like before every major box office release became the same offering of superheroes who just couldn't wait to say something witty in the face of danger. It's as if every superhero adopted Spider-Man's sense of humor, since Spider-Man wasn't around to do anything about it due to contract obligations with Sony. It doesn't help that Crystal Dynamics hasn't figured out how to design superhero characters that don't give off creepy Mandela effect vibes. It's amazing how they manage that in two separate games. Video games Spider-Man and Batman don't trigger this effect despite differing from their movie castings. One look at the Guardians stirs that weird Berenstain Bears effect where my brain recalls it being one way, but what I'm looking at says it's something else, which is an even more impressive feat when you consider that one of them is a walking tree trunk, another a furry, and the other two are just people wearing body paint. Maybe had they found a better equilibrium between character development versus character design, this problem could have been avoided. I have not come across a game to date that put this much effort into fleshing out its cast, but failed because it tries so hard in that excited former drug user turned youth counselor kind of way. Knowing this much detail about people I can't connect with comes off a bit unnerving. I'm left feeling less like the player and more like the Facebook app on their phones, listening in on their conversations so I can learn which brand of dog food to deliver ads for when it comes time to feed the damn raccoon.
Star-Lord.
Star-Lord's superhero name was taken from the band Quill Followed. This is something that would be so cringe on Earth that it could only work among aliens with no awareness of human culture. You try insisting your friends call you Slayer or Megadeth. Quill was a teenager in this flashback dream sequence, and that took place in the early mid-80s, meaning he is now in his early to mid-50s and the game is set in current year. Now I can buy that he doesn't look his age due to his father not being human. With age comes maturity. And at some point you start cringing at your past self. Adulthood seems to have passed Quill right by, allowing him to still be a child of the 80s. For someone who has now spent more of his life in space around aliens, I would expect him to have changed quite a bit and even adopted some alien culture and tastes. I think they need to start writing his personality as a coping mechanism for being taken away from his home by force more than a charming characteristic. Every once in a while, the game takes a break from space adventuring to display the telltale signs of game developers giving themselves a teenage hormone wash by exploring an 80s nostalgia museum. The only thing that truly worries me is that the knowledge that we're only a few years away from games glorifying the 90s in the same way, the era I grew up in. And I know damn well it's probably going to work on me.
Think they'll listen to me when the famous Miss Teapot is at the bar?
We are not talking about the teapot thing.
Ooh, I hit a nerve.
I bought this game on Steam, but honestly they should try selling it on Spotify, because the characters spend most of the game recording a podcast. They never shut the hell up. The amount of dialogue triggers in the game must be award-winning. Every time I would turn around to check an alternate pathway or stood in place for more than a few seconds, my team would start talking about it. This game may have opted for single player, but damn if it doesn't try to replicate the experience of your friends never using push to talk and allowing you to hear every cough, chip bag rustle, or yell to someone in the adjacent room.
The network just reset. You can enter the sequence, Peter. 0451.
That's it? 4 digits?
Suspicious. These security measures are too simplistic for Novacore.
It's not that simple. The code only works on this date for this ship.
Oh, I get it. Gamora's codes are more like an encryption key of some sort, designed to integrate temporal coordinates and our ship's hard-coded serial into a local number generator.
Just shut up and let me send the access code to the Novacore quarantine sector being only 4 digits long. You only offer an explanation because you know it's hard to swallow.
That's why I like you, Quill. You're so pure.
I'm not seeing a monster, but that big cylinder up ahead looks like the mining ship Peter's friend said to look for.
Can you guys pick a name for the main character and use it? Gamora calls him Peter, Rocket calls him Quill, Drax calls him Peter Quill, and a few other characters call him Star-Lord. Everyone tends to work out what someone is going to be called in the first day they get to know each other. I will say this, the game does a masterful job on the visual design of the environments. Every one of them gives off an otherworldly alien vibe, but as visually appealing as they are, that doesn't mean I want to spend my entire day running through them. Every level feels a bit too dragged out for my liking. There's not a single one I can describe as short and sweet. Gravity is selective inside the quarantine sector. All of the destroyed warships in the war float in the zero gravity of space, but Quill and the others walk on the wrecks under the influence of full gravity that originates from seemingly nowhere, and he can even fall off the ships into space. I have to give it to the developers for finally making the main character the weakest and least interesting when it comes to combat. Quill is akin to being stuck as Hawkeye in the Avengers, armed only with the starting pistol from Doom 2016. Quill has 2 blasters and receives no other weapons besides some elemental upgrades. Meanwhile, my teammates are slicing people up with swords, throwing them across the screen, growing roots out of the ground to grab them, and even shooting more interesting and fun-looking guns. Combat consists entirely of commanding your allies to use their much more effective and visually appealing moves, while pretending you're helping as you sling volley after volley of lasers that are as satisfying to shoot as Space Invaders bullets. Not that Crystal Dynamics is the only developer who likes to drop its characters onto a slide, but you can tell this is one of their games. Whenever they think the player needs a break from shooting or platforming, they throw in a water slide. Quill and Rocket find the Soul Stone inside the mining ship, and then a monster comes out of it. For a group that is hard up for money, Quill and Rocket show no interest in taking the stone with them, or the monster, even though they are here to capture one to get paid by Lady Hellbender. Huddle Up brings your team together so you can pick the obviously right encouragement for the team buff. Picking wrong only buffs yourself, which when you consider how useless you are isn't much help. And as a special bonus for anyone who wants to stream or let's play this game, it provides you the chance to be copyright claimed due to playing hit songs like Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley.
Is it, doing it?
What?
It appears to be broken.
Ain't nothing broke! That's the sound it's supposed to make!
What sound?
You can't hear that!
Hear what?
Their plan was to use these thumper devices Rocket created to drive their quarry to them. But the placement of the thumpers doesn't make any sense. Most were planted outside the ship, and this last thumper is placed inside the room on the derelict mining ship where they were told they could find the monster. These devices play a high-pitched noise that is painful to animals like Rocket, which would only drive it away from the devices, not toward it. It also apparently stops working as soon as the monster appears because Rocket can hear again just fine. Even though the monster proves to be a space llama that they can never sell to Lady Hellbender, they take it with them anyway. The real monster they came here for is way too big to ever fit inside their ship, which has a rather tiny cargo hold. They really should have learned what it was they were hunting before even coming here. But it ends up not mattering because this is a fake out. The monster that came out of the Soul Stone kills it, and somehow causes the quarantine sector to start coming apart because they had to fly out dodging spaceship wrecks. It wasn't this dangerous flying into this place. And all that happened was the monster that came out of the Soul Stone killed the big space fish.
I will eject the crate into space.
Eject the crate and I melt your face! The Milano's weapon systems are 4 generations behind, Quill. We need that tech, more than we need some stupid farm animal.
That farm animal could be a Class 3 biohazard. You want to end up in the kiln?
You may be surprised to learn this is actually the second Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game, the first having been made by Telltale and receiving about as much attention. While the two games are not connected by anything but branding, there are moments in this game where you have to make key decisions or convince someone through correct dialogue options. None of them change much, and there's only one ending in the game, so I never saw the point.
Gardeners of the Galaxy?
What? No. Rocket. So I let Groot fill out the paperwork. I fixed it with an addendum.
I haven't watched the movies, but I'm going to wager this joke was made in them as well.
It says right here, prisoner processing training. I'm your official trainee.
Aren't you a little young for the Corps?
Aren't you a little old for that hairdo?
It's a legitimate question. Nikki is a child, and her mother is the commander of this ship. I smell nepotism. Also, how does an alien know what would constitute trending hairstyles back on Earth? Random explosions are useful for isolating 2 characters you need to develop away from the others. Eidos Montreal has a track record of dropping 2 characters down a well so they can get to know each other. Quill needed a quick-time event to avoid dying here, yet Nikki was just fine without one, since there's a platform down there to fall onto. For some reason it's broken though, even though the explosion was well above this catwalk. If the explosion of Rager's ship that the 2 of you were right next to was strong enough to do this kind of damage several levels down from it and separated by a lot of metal superstructure, then you 2 should be paced. You can't see restraints when you pick up objects and look at them.
Are you seriously lying for a 12-year-old right now?
12? Oh wow, I thought she was at least 16.
Peter!
This line is skeevy enough as it is, but it gets even worse because right after this, Quill starts questioning Ko-Rel if Nikki is his daughter.
What?
I know you're hiding something.
I still have feelings for you.
You can choose to help Nikki out by letting her hide her level 6 access passkey she used to bypass security on Quill. But considering that he's a prisoner, and all of his things may very well be taken and inspected, possessing a security pass to a Nova Corps ship on him might not look that great. Not to mention that giving a prisoner something like that to keep yourself out of trouble is the worst thing you could ever do when you've set out to impress your mother with how well you can handle yourself.
I can't believe you still have them.
Quill's Chewbacca action figure is with Corel, who he gave it to back during the war. Which is hard to believe because I don't think he had it with him when he was abducted from Earth as a kid, according to his flashbacks of that time. It was in his basement when he was abducted.
12-year-old daughter you didn't have during the war. 12 years ago when we...
Peter.
Corel could very easily clear up this misunderstanding, but she ignores the question and lets him go on believing that he's Nikki's dad. She didn't even have to reveal the full truth. She could just say no, Nikki isn't his daughter.
You're gonna pay 7,000 units? In 3 cycles?
Wow, okay, that is a lot of money. Here, I was thinking that maybe...
The fine's non-negotiable.
Quill could drop the fact that he saved Corel's daughter from death right after the explosion. If she won't drop the fine for that, she could at least lower it.
There! That's Lady Hellbender's fortress.
Get us in close, Quill. I don't want to walk in this.
Yep, no problem. Flying the wrong way.
Nah, he's not flying at all.
If you can fly the Milano all the way from orbit to within a few miles of Lady Hellbender's fortress, I think you can handle the weather another minute to reach it without sitting down and walking the rest of the way through a monster-filled jungle. Several levels in this game are only as long as they are because they set the Milano down miles away from their objective. You may find the puzzle mechanics of this game similar to another game you might have played. For instance, Gamora cuts vines out of your way, Drax pushes heavy things around, Groot makes bridges out of vines, and Rocket hacks terminals and crawls into tiny spaces. When you throw in the fact that each of them have 4 special attacks that I command them to use, and the main character is permanently stuck as a 13-year-old, you have a pretty solid argument that this is just Pokemon. 2 of them could even pass as a Pokemon.
Son of a schmack, reach!
Sword will not work, woman. Find us a rope. Yeah, it fast.
And your sword would cut your fingers off if you tried to pull them out while holding the blade. Instead of a rope, how about Groot extend some of his vines that he normally uses for growing bridges? I think that might work just as well. Quinn can only discover his new blaster powers when the plot calls for a highly specific one like ice blasts. In all the years he's had his father's blasters, he never encountered situations before now that awakened them.
The cage! We need the cage. We go into that fortress with our monster peacefully walking beside us. We'll be laughed right out of the room.
So you guys earlier went into the quarantine sector to capture a monster you had no details on, and you didn't even have a way of containing it afterward, and you only now realize you need a cage right before you reach your destination so you can fool Lady Hellbender into believing Groot is a monster? Selling one of your friends into slavery while dragging them across a bridge is the perfect time to recall that one birthday party you had with your mom 40 or so years ago. When I'm making decisions as teenage Quill, shouldn't the portrait be a teenage Quill instead of current age Quill?
Think of it as a long overdue gift from your father. It's upstairs on my bed. Go on and get it while I finish up in the kitchen.
Quill's mom gives him his father's blasters for his birthday. He's 13, lady. You only reluctantly agreed to let him go see a scary movie, and you want to give him dangerous alien weapons?
A Flora Colossus. I thought your kind had been wiped out. Name your terms, Destroyer.
This plan came with 2 options, selling Groot or Rocket, but regardless of whomever you choose to sell, the other will be here in the room with you during the exchange. Lady Hellbender seems pretty taken with Groot, so I have no idea how she would have responded to Rocket, but she would have seen Groot regardless.
The storms of Seknov grow ravenous. You will stay among my Hellraisers and revel as one of us.
That works out surprisingly well in their favor, since they planned all along to take Groot back after selling him, but they never once discussed how they were going to hang around in the fortress after making the deal.
3, 2...
No one questions why Groot can open his pen from the inside, or why he's acting weird and not saying anything.
Crap.
Guardians of the Galaxy. You fools thought you could cheat me and suffer no consequence.
Groot.
Lady Hellbender figured out they were planning to screw her over and set a trap, yet also placed the real Groot inside her trap along with the imposter, meaning Groot can help fight against a Dweller in the Darnishi 6 on you. She could have killed the Guardians and still kept Groot.
Nikki's your mom around. I really need to talk to her.
She's with me. Inside me. After we left, we went into the quarantine zone. I see Gabor and there was dark fog.
Quill tries to contact the Nova Corps to pay their fine, and Nikki answers, ranting through the bad reception about something being inside of her. If Quill is going to be a walking love letter to the 80s, pulp sci-fi, horror, D&D, and adventure movies, then at some point I expect him to see the signs and not walk into obvious danger.
Mark it! Look at what it did! It chewed everything! The scut!
The llama chewed up the comms and they lose contact with Nikki. This isn't really a sin beyond incredibly inconvenient timing, but it becomes a much bigger sin later, so it needed to be entered into the record.
What do you mean there's no Centurion Corral? Her ship's literally docked outside.
I understand your confusion. We will set your tumultuous souls at ease. Come, guardians of the galaxy. We will take you to the Hallis Hope. Then you too can have faith.
All of the Nova Corps on the station have been brainwashed by the Universal Church of Truth. After escaping the ship, the plan switches to traveling to Knowhere, the inhabited head of a dead celestial at the edge of the known universe, to tell the Chief of Security, Cosmo, about the Nova Corps and to get him to pay their fine. There had to be somewhere closer. Later on, they even travel to the Nova Corps homeworld and explain the same problem to the World Mine and pay their fine.
Where the Kotati take root, the broken promise of all will be mended.
Mantis shows up to leave plot instructions for Drax to follow once the church indoctrinates him later.
I don't remember meeting you, man. Sorry.
How the hell could you forget?
Look, there was a couple of years there where things got a little bit blurry, okay? They're, picking up missions, strange women, alien alcohol.
I'm not buying it. Not only can Quill remember every detail of his 13th birthday party some 30 or 40 years ago, Quill has recalled all sorts of war stories and people from their past.
I got you this instead.
What is it?
The ticket for Collector's Emporium.
How would you have known Quill was going to be here to buy him a gift? Especially when your first instinct was to shoot him. Knowhere is the only time in the game where all your team takes off to do other things and leaves you to explore on your own. It's a nice reprieve from the experience of driving across country with the kids in tow, and not a single handheld gaming system to keep them occupied. But it's only a pit stop before we're right back to listening to them drone on about things once it's over.
When Thanos murdered my family, for a long time I believed that their wasted lives would be redeemed if I took revenge on him.
I like Drax. He's like Kratos, if Kratos took his medication.
But then I realized Thanos cannot be killed.
But you did kill him.
Propaganda, Peter Quill. Spread to quell fears after the war. The fabric of my being, I know he still lives.
I feel like they were setting themselves up for a potential sequel story with Thanos. Fat chance of that happening now that Square Enix sold the developer and this game underperformed in sales.
Peter! Shoot now! We need to keep them separated!
The brothers Lady Hellbender hired to kill Quill are invincible as long as they are close to each other. Once they get far enough apart, their armor vanishes, leaving them vulnerable. As far as weaknesses go, it seems easy enough to not move away from each other's general location. Also, why would armor be designed with a co-op function? His armor isn't covering his face, so I'm not sure why Drax's fist stopped being effective. Quill's subconscious bookmarking of his own memories is impressive, managing to pick up right from where his previous trip down memory lane left off.
Before your father returned to space.
Mom.
I know it sounds crazy and that you've never believed me, but something has changed.
And parents think telling their kids to use condoms make for a difficult conversation. Quill's mom had to drop that his father is an alien king.
I used to think he left these for our protection. But they might as well be paperweights.
Non-functioning blasters convince Quill of his mom's story. I think most would see that as bullshit, and she just picked these up at a toy store.
His people were at war, and he knew that if he stayed with us, the war would follow him to Earth. So he made the hard choice. He gave up this life for the sake of his people. Your father left to protect us. And for 13 years it worked.
Quill's mom sounds like a gullible girl, and his dad a deadbeat with a more creative lie than he was headed out to buy milk and would be right back.
I'm gonna let Kubrick out. I'll be right back.
Mom grabbed a shotgun before letting the dog out, thankfully, since she comes under attack by the Chitauri. Quill's backstory, where his farm was attacked by aliens, forcing him to use his father's blasters to defend it, resembles a 90s commercial for a video game. I'm not kidding. Splice in some footage of Contra with a deep voiceover and it works.
So let us investigate for you.
Always a catch, Peter Quill. And not fun kind with ball.
Cosmo is speaking through telepathy, yet his ball machine can hear it.
What Guardian of Galaxies want in return?
Simple. Drop the charges. Contact Nova Corps HQ and get the World Mind to forgive our fine. Then we'll go.
This plot can only be motivated to move forward when someone threatens the Guardians of the Galaxy with legal trouble.
In Soviet Russia, Cosmo would not trust words of capitalist scum.
How would a dog pick up every Russian stereotype when it developed intelligence after it left the Soviet Union in a space capsule that went adrift? Or even care about socioeconomic theory? You're a dog. You were given all the food and belly rubs for free.
Avengers! Assemble!
What kind of name is Avengers?
Yeah, I would separate this game from the Avengers game by an entire dimension as well.
There's a blue wire and 2 connections, yellow and red. And 1 big green thing.
Don't touch the green thing!
Not a great time to start yelling, dude!
Why would the panel be wired in such a way that touching the end of a connection to a green light would open the airlock instead of turning off the gravity, or actually do anything? It is just a green light after all. Quill's blaster once again realizes that he's in danger, and awakens an electrical shot this time that can overload electronics. Back on board the Nova Corps ship, they make their way back to Nikki's secret area and find a computer full of info on Quill. It seems Nikki didn't know who her father was and now assumes it's Quill after their one meeting. There was not a single compelling reason for her to develop this line of thought. I realized Quill was trying to not get in more trouble after they were caught inside the quarantine sector, but he really should have mentioned the weird monster and glowing stone he saw there, because Ko-Rel went in there to search and was killed by it.
You came here seeking truth. Rejoice. The matriarch wishes to share it with you.
How is it that Eidos Montreal keeps writing the same plot about an old man leading a deranged cult and a girl containing the spirit of a god? Tomb Raider was the first game I sinned. You think I forgot about that? In the very short period of time from when one Nova Corps ship was indoctrinated by the cult, they managed to acquire a custom temple ship bigger than anything else in the game. Even Knowhere.
Even sacrosanct herself, all powered by the same miraculous energy. Energy I discovered.
Believing in a god of some kind creates energy that can be siphoned from believers. They never offer a compelling reason for why the followers would give all their faith energy to this cult, so I have to assume that the followers believe that with enough of it, the dead can be brought back to life. But the game never clarifies that. Raker doesn't hear Rocket jump on top of his drone, nor does the drone do anything that might alert Raker to Rocket tinkering with it, and Raker himself doesn't notice that a furry raccoon isn't standing with the rest of the group.
It seemed like the matriarch was a thing at some point.
She is the second divine vessel I was talking about the first. The one who refused to reverse the death of my son!
How devout is your faith if you had to abandon your first choice of God and go with a second? I notice your dead son isn't here with you, so how well is the new matriarch going? And did your previous God even promise to bring your son back? Seems unlikely given who your God was. So where did this belief that a God of your choosing can revive the dead come from?
Hey, we're gonna get you out of here. Just follow my lead.
But this is where we're supposed to be.
Nikki is further away from you than Raker. Whispering loud enough for her to hear means he would hear you as well.
Stop! She doesn't have to die, Peter. You can save her. I promise.
I expect cults to have more beliefs beyond promising to reunite you with your loved ones. Every religion promises that in the afterlife. What are the tenets of this faith that dictate the proper way to live your life? What if someone has no loved ones they want to see again? What's supposed to convince them? This cult is unbelievably effective, by the end having converted most of the people in the galaxy, even though they employ none of the well-known cult indoctrination techniques.
Mom. Stop hugging me!
Peter, what are you doing?
I'm sorry.
This isn't funny. Put that down, young man.
You can have a lot of fun rejecting your mom's love and shooting her over and over again. You know, if you're the kind of sick freak with those issues.
Thanks, Dad. I love you.
Nikki really latched onto the idea that Quill was her father so quick that it became the method Magus uses to control her.
I don't know how, but the three of us are connected now. That thing has her, but she can still be saved. She has to accept my death. She must.
The soul of the real Corel is here to warn Quill, but she still won't tell him that Nikki is not his daughter even now. All of the Guardians were being indoctrinated, but all but one of them managed to resist. That's not exactly good odds. Not good enough to explain this cult converting nearly everyone in the galaxy by the end of the game anyways.
By rejecting the promise, you have proven yourselves unworthy. And you must be destroyed.
Your religion only has one tenet, and that's reuniting people with dead loved ones. It really doesn't match with all the killing you're doing of anyone who rejects you. What does it matter if someone doesn't want to follow your faith? You have an entire universe full of potential followers.
What? That was completely intentional. The Milano's on her way.
Rocket manages to call the Milano so they can escape, which is interesting because earlier the space llama on board chewed up the comms, and they never fixed it.
There he is! I'm going after Raker! Don't follow!
What? Gamora!
Gamora has felt narratively useless in this game since the only thing she has going for her is her dad is Thanos, who technically isn't in this game. So she suddenly gains empathy with Nikki over being controlled by the cult, which is similar to her time under Thanos. Calling it tacked on isn't the correct term. It's more like using barely functioning kitchen magnets that keep falling off to stick your child's hideous drawing to the fridge. What kind of piping system has huge gaps built into it and also empties directly into space? When this caused the ship to lose all of its breathable air? You don't instantly freeze in space. Radiating heat away in a vacuum takes quite a while.
Barely got away from!
Gamora somehow got on the Milano after chasing down Raker, even though the Milano never docked with the temple ship and left right after it scooped up Quill and the others. And the Milano isn't a big ship, its only entrance is the cargo bay where the rest of them enter through. But she somehow shows up after the group has had time to change clothes and have a rest, and discuss going back for Gamora.
How'd you get back?
It doesn't matter.
Actually it does if you want me to suspend my disbelief.
If we go back there, we're dead. D-E-D! Dead!
I'd rather die with honor than without.
Then why did you leave if you were so determined to go back and save Nikki even if it's a suicide mission? You took Raker's arm, so I assume you had him on the ropes.
Hey, but what choice do we have? We don't have comms.
Well, actually, we might have comms. It turns out they weren't as flarked as I originally thought.
I'm assuming you know that now because you called the Milano here to escape. Maybe there was something to that cult. The miracles are coming hard and fast now.
Talked about this, man. You gotta stop.
Your illegitimate child was correct, Peter Quill. Hovat and Chimeria will be restored.
Yeah, okay.
We just need to have faith.
I don't pretend to know how this indoctrination works, mainly because the game doesn't bother to explain it, but Drax falls under it well after the group fled the ship. I guess there was a bit of a delay. Depending on whether you chose to hide either the space llama or the weapon parts, the method for escaping your room that Drax locked you inside is different. One is an annoying minigame where you have to lead the llama to a switch by yelling at it. The other just has Quill escaping his room because the space llama chewed a hole up through the ceiling of the lower deck and through his wall. If the llama can shoot through the walls of a spaceship, I think it's the last animal you would ever want on board. What if it chewed through the hull?
What are we doing here, Mantis?
I told him to come on Knowhere. I saw time inside his mind. The lies that bind. I mean, what's a girl to do?
Drax, in his indoctrinated state, was focused on what Mantis whispered to him earlier, something he's never brought up since then, and came here to kill her, talk to her, I don't know. He just knew this is where he needed to be.
Come on, the creepy cave's this way.
The what now?
The creepy cave, where the darkest of our future paths will meet.
This is a pretty clear sign of writing yourself into a corner, so just have the manic pixie dream psychic come along and explain what to do next. You can't push a natural rock formation like it's a bookshelf. Mantis fell off Drax after Rocket accidentally brought the roof down on them, and Drax would have killed himself if Quill's guns didn't somehow realize that this was the time to develop a new and very specific wind power.
No way. No flarkin' way.
Doesn't seem that wet. Like, medium wet.
I ain't walking through a flarkin' monsoon.
Maybe there's a way to use those plants to divert the water. We're a team. We'll figure it out.
Are we seriously gonna let this keep us from saving Drax?
Sure, you save him while I drown.
Is Rocket suffering from space rabies again? Because hydrophobia suddenly becomes a thing he has to overcome. This whole section is only a puzzle because he refuses to get wet.
And it's just a coincidence they sound like all the flarkin' scutbags that have tried to kill us recently.
Shh. What do you mean, shh?
Starguy's right.
Shh. And about what?
Shh. There's a new way out!
So it was nothing.
The puzzle with the fog is to not recall your enemies, but Gamora and Rocket do it every single time, so it only matters if Quill recalls a memory of past fights. Maybe his character design is on point, but Adam Warlock is a poster child for steroid-abusing Instagrammers claiming their build is all natural. Considering he helped found a gullible cult, My interpretation isn't all that far off the mark. Mantis sends him into Drax's mind to battle the indoctrination keeping him bound to the cult. Inside they find Thanos, except he's a repeat of the brothers fight from Knowhere again. Why Thanos is even here makes no sense. Drax's dead family is what's keeping him bound, not his revenge against Thanos.
Insidious succubus! Release your thrall!
The more poetic way of saying begone thought. I know I already compared Drax and Kratos, but damn. While I'm at it, Rocket clearly inspired Ratchet from Ratchet & Clank. The only differences are anger management and the choice of a robot friend over a plant. Magus was created within Adam Warlock by his own hubris over being worshipped by a god by Raker and the sick miners of the ship. This upset Adam so much he let Raker build a machine to remove the Soul Stone from him, but somehow ended up stealing Adam's powers in the process, and in that moment Adam somehow also faked his own death, and neither of them recovered the Soul Stone, which was left on board the mining ship, where Quill found it. Adam then went into hiding at the center of this planet for no real reason. Raker had yet to do anything truly terrible at that time.
Hail, traveler! Have you accepted the truth of a divine promise?
We have. My deceased wife and daughter are with me.
Do you think it's a good idea for Adam Warlock to be standing right behind you in view of the screen while you lie about all you being followers of the cult now? While Drax was under its influence, he recognized Adam immediately and went after him. I get that Gamora is very upset seeing a child being manipulated by the cult just like she was by Thanos, but every single person in this cult has been indoctrinated against their will, and the team never spare a thought for all the innocent people they're killing.
Really? A fate force field?
If we can find the power source, we should be able to turn it off.
What's the point of a force field to keep people out if the power source for it is right next to it?
Oops.
Rocket could have picked a better time to shoot a tracking device into Adam Warlock's butt. The guy's in the middle of battling Raker. Cosmo has been indoctrinated as well. But now that Drax has been cured with great difficulty, requiring the Cosmic Madonna and Adam Warlock along with all the Guardians of the Galaxy, everyone else can be cured with lecturing and reminding them that the promise is not real.
What about your puppies, Cosmo? They're your family.
Cosmo young, or...
They're here, man. And they're counting on you. For love, for protection.
It's a minor point, but I'm curious about Cosmo's puppies. Is there another intelligent dog out here in space? What is it like being sentient when your children are just normal dogs? That's gonna be weird.
Please, give me an excuse to kill him.
For all the hype surrounding Adam Warlock, Gamora did better than him against Raker. She managed to take one of his arms. The church has Nikki hooked up to the cosmic corridor so she can channel faith energy from everywhere all at once. This is also supposed to make the process safer for her, but how sucking up all energy at once is safer when done through a multi-dimensional conduit, I don't know. There's no reason for the church to abandon Knowhere and take the more risky option of channeling faith energy without the conduit. All the Guardians of the Galaxy did was turn off the machine and free the big hand, something I assume could be recaptured. They can at least kill all of them while they have the advantage rather than fly away on giant SD cards. Earlier, when the group spoke to the World Mind to pay their fine and ask for help, it made it seem like taking on the church with any armed force was futile. But now the plan is to recruit Lady Hellbender and her army by capturing Fin Fang Foom. I have to ask this again, but how are you supposed to get Fin Fang Foom, a giant dragon, into your ship and back to Lady Hellbender? This is the exact same issue you would have had with the last monster hunt. There go Quill's guns again, this time reacting to the team being trapped and a giant chunk of ice falling toward them. Why are these features only unlocked as needed instead of being selectable? Imagine a rifle that decides when you can use burst and full auto fire. Right after they defeat Fin Fang Foom, Lady Hellbender shows up with her army. I guess that solves how they were supposed to get Fin Fang Foom to her.
You murdered the Dragon Lord of Kakarantara! Ah!
They accidentally killed Fin Fang Foom instead of catching it, but thankfully Groot now has the ability to revive the dead, which strikes me as a major narrative problem, because the whole point of the Universal Church of Truth is that they promise to revive your lost loved ones, which they can't do, and what several characters have said is impossible to do. Yet here's Groot doing just that. Remember when this game depicted Rocket, Quill, Drax, and Groot freezing in the vacuum of space? Well, Rocket is out on the hull now just fine. His oxygen mask is enough to keep him warm and stop him from dying from exposure to vacuum.
My tunes!
Yeah, I rigged it to blast your scuddy music across all channels, while the church is out looking for the source.
We cut the engines and we flow silently right past them to board the sacrosanct. Smart.
It's just that easy to fool them. Play some music and they chase after it. No advanced scanners or anything. Are you really telling me these ships flying right over the Milano can't see or detect it because they turned off the power and lights?
Hellbender has arrived!
Guardians of the Galaxy, stop hiding!
I'm willing to believe a space dragon can somehow survive and fly in space, but not if it's using its wings. Also, Lady Hellbender has no trouble locating the Milano despite them having their lights off, which we just saw made them undetectable to all the church ships. Furthermore, how did she sneak by a fleet on a giant space dragon? She even grabbed Quill's tape deck, which the ships were tracking, which should have pulled all the ships' attention to her. And one final point, how is she speaking in space when there is no atmosphere for her voice to travel through? I'm not even going to bother asking how she's breathing right now. You know, an even better way of sneaking on board the temple ship would have been to use the dimensional corridor inside Knowhere again, just like you did the last time when Cosmo sent you to investigate the cult. That thing plopped you down right inside their ship. What is it with all the Marvel games thinking the final mission requires a costume change that serves no function? Spider-Man, Avengers, and now Guardians of the Galaxy have all done it.
And I got a theory. Yup, artificial gravity. Figured a ship this big would need it for repairs and stuff.
The ship clearly had artificial gravity because you weren't floating around inside it. It doesn't make much sense for it to have artificial gravity on the outside hull though. Also, Rocket isn't even bothering to have a face mask on this time while in space. Just screw the idea of oxygen, I guess.
There's no we.
Okay, I get it. I have a lot of making up to do.
Peter.
If we're gonna do this...
I'm dead, Peter.
Yeah, but... not like dead.
That is a problem. But Groot might be able to do something about it now.
But she isn't your daughter. She's not my daughter.
Is there a reason you couldn't clear up that misconception Quill had back when he first questioned you about it, instead of letting him believe he was Nikki's father? The Kree kill non-full-blooded members of their race. But I think you could have trusted Quill and Nikki with the truth.
I don't understand.
She's a war orphan. On the shuttle home, the Kree Council was rounding up anyone who wasn't full-blooded enough.
How does Nikki being a war orphan translate into her being half-blood Kree? It sounds like you didn't even know who her parents were when you found her. And if you wanted to keep her safe from the Kree Council, why did you name her Nicolette Gold? A very non-Kree name.
The birthday, the presents. Whatever it is, it's keeping her attached to some fake version of me, of us. Destroy the illusion and make her listen. Trolling a birthday party is how you break the strongest indoctrination in the game. Big difference from the last two who needed careful explaining of their false reality. Rejecting the promise gives Nikki a new haircut, a new outfit, and powers. I still have no idea why Magus wanted to suck up all the faith energy of the galaxy. They never got around to explaining that. I guess Magus teleported them into the astral plane or something so they can have this showdown. Nice of him to do that instead of killing them all outright.
The stone. When that thing attacked my mom and me, it was terrified of the stone.
Yes, I too have sensed its fear of the stone.
Oh, yes! The ancient stone! One of the six! It's the only thing strong enough to contain the all-powerful soul of Magus!
Okay, so we just gotta get him closer and then throw a magic rock at him?
The soul stone was implanted inside Nikki's hand the entire time Magus was hosted inside of her, but just touching it now will seal him back inside it.
I think she means aggravating people.
If anyone can piss off a god,
it is us.
To defeat the final boss, you have to annoy him by talking a lot. I feel like Magus is a stand-in for how the player must feel by this point.
He's gotta be okay. Right, Mantis?
The important thing is that he did it. You all did.
This was not his sacrifice to make.
Groot has forgotten that he can revive the dead already. Oh, no, there he goes. He just wanted everyone to have a sentimental moment before reviving Quill. If I were Nikki seeing this, I would be rightly pissed off after being told nothing can bring my dead mother back.
Har har! You're just about as funny as this game is exciting.